seid,
let's begin with prayer.
lasst uns mit Gebet anfangen.
Dear Father in heaven,
Lieber Vater im Himmel,
thank you that we can come here again to worship you.
danke, dass wir ein weiteres Mal hier kommen können, um dich anzubeten.
Please be present and bless our studies.
Bitte sei anwesend und segne unsere Studien.
Please remind us of those things that you have shown us already about the sanctuary.
Bitte erinnere uns an all das, was du uns bereits über das Heiligtum gezeigt hast.
And please bring these things together with our understanding that we have obtained lately.
Und bitte bringe diese Sachen in Zusammenhang mit das, was wir neulich zu verstanden verstanden haben.
And please help me also to relay these things clearly.
Und bitte hilf mich, dass ich diese Sache auch klar darlegen wird.
Please forgive us our sins.
Bitte vergebe uns unsere Sünden.
And bless us because you promised that if we ask, we shall receive.
Und bitte segne uns, denn du hast verheißen, wenn wir bitten, dann werden wir erhalten.
In Jesus' name.
Amen. In Jesu Namen.
Amen.
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 Okay, so I posted some notes in the livestream group.
So, ich habe Notizen in die Livestream-Gruppe gepostet.
And those are actually some old notes from a study that I did some time ago.
Die sind Notizen von einem Studium, die ich seit einiger Zeit gemacht habe.
But I just want to remind ourselves of these points.
Ich möchte uns nur an diesen Punkten erinnern.
And also in light of what Mark shared with us some days ago about the judgment in Revelation 4 and 5.
Und auch in Bezug über das, was Bruder Mark mit uns vor ein paar Tagen geteilt hast, über das Gericht in Offenbarung 4 und 5.
Okay, so let's begin in Revelation 4.
So lasst uns in Offenbarung 4 anfangen.
And we want to look at the altar of sacrifice,
Und wir wollen diesen Opferaltar anschauen,
but also how it is related, or how it stands in relation to the whole sanctuary,
aber wie es in Bezug auf das gesamte Heiligtum genommen wird.
and how it is illustrated in Revelation 4 and 5.
Und wie es in Offenbarung 4 und 5 dargestellt wird.
Okay, so let's begin in Revelation 4, verse 1 to 6.
Wir fangen in Offenbarung 4 an, die Verse 1 bis 6.
It says, After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone. And there was a rainbow round about the throne, in sight like unto an emerald. And round about the throne were 24 seats, and upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment. And they had on their heads crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. Okay, so what is John seeing here?
So, was sieht Johannes hier? Thron.
Yes, he sees a throne, right?
Sieht den Thron.
And he sees one sitting upon the throne.
Und sieht einen, der darauf sitzt.
And who's that who sits here on the throne?
Wer ist das, der auf dem Thron sitzt?
The Father.
Das ist der Vater.
Okay, so let me just erase this here. So it's the Father sitting on the throne here.
Der Vater sitzt hier auf dem Thron.
Revelation 4. Okay. And according to verse 6, what is before the throne?
Und gemäß Vers 6, was ist vor dem Thron?
Yes, it's the sea of glass, right?
Also der gelesene Meer,
Like under crystal.
wie Kristall.
Like crystal. Yes. Okay. And actually we can maybe go in our Bibles and just let's look at further the next verses.
Da gehen wir in unsere Bibeln zu Offenbarung 4.
Let's read verses 7 to 10.
Und wir lesen die Verse 7 bis 10.
It says, and the first beast was like a lion, and the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. And the four beasts had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and which is to come. So, where does this illustration therefore place us on the line?
So auf der Linie, wo ist diese Darstellung?
Yes.
So, heilig, heilig,
It's
heilig.
Isaiah 6 experience, right?
Isaiah 6 Erfahrung.
So it's the Father sitting here on the throne, right?
Das ist der Vater, der hier auf dem Thron sitzt.
And when the Father is sitting on the throne, what kind of judgment is it?
Also, als der Vater auf dem Thron sitzt, was für ein Gericht ist das?
Yes, investigative judgment.
Das ist der Untersuchungsgericht.
Investigative judgment. Okay, so in Isaiah 6, you had holy, 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 right?
So, Jesaja 6, heilig, heilig, heilig.
And what did Isaiah do then?
Und was tat Jesaja?
Yeah, he was humbled in the dust, right?
Er wurde im Staub gedemütigt,
Fell on his face.
fiel auf sein Angesicht.
Okay, so now let's read here in verse 9 and 10.
So, lass uns jetzt die Verse 9 und 10 lesen.
So after the 3 times holy in verse 8, it says,
So, nach der dreimal heilig in Vers 8 sagt es,
And when those beasts give glory and honor and thanks to him that sat on the throne, who liveth for ever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him that sat on the throne, and worship him that liveth for ever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, for thy pleasure they are and were created. So what do the 24 elders do here?
was tun die 24 Ältesten?
They fall down and worship, right?
Die fallen nieder und beten an.
Okay. So in what principle could we see
Und
in
welches
this?
Prinzip können wir hier drin sehen? So im Himmel, so on Earth.
Yeah, as it is in heaven, so it shall be on earth, right?
So wie im Himmel, so auf Erden.
And just keep your finger here. Let's read this once more.
So, haltet den Platz hier und das werden wir lesen.
Let's go to Matthew 6.
Gehen wir zu Matthäus 6.
Matthew 6 and
Okay.
verse 10. Yes, yes.
Vers 10.
It's the Lord's Prayer, right?
Das Vater unser.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Okay, so you see the relation between everything what happens in heaven should also happen on earth, right?
Kann den Zusammenhang sehen. Alles, was im Himmel geschieht, soll auch auf Erden geschehen.
She has that quote where she says that things between heaven and she says one thing I know is that those things between heaven and earth are close and decided.
Yes,
Something
like closely related or something.
Dann weiter hat diesen Zitat, wo sie sagt, das, was im Himmel ist, ist in also engen Zusammenhang mit das, was auf der Erde geschieht.
Yes. Okay, so at the same time, the 24 elders in heaven bow down after the 3 times holy. It's also when Isaiah on earth bows down.
So,
After
im
the
Himmel,
three
wo die
times holy.
24 Ältesten niederbeugen und ihren Kronen niederwerfen, ist es derselbe Zeitpunkt, wo Jesaja in Jesaja 6 niederfällt auf
Because-
sein Angesicht.
Isaiah, what was he permitted to do?
Denn Jesaja, was ist ihm erlaubt zu tun?
See the holiness of God or on the Day of Atonement.
Yes. So he was permitted to have a view.
God's
Ihm
glory.
ist gestattet, einen Einblick von der Herrlichkeit des Herrn zu sehen.
But he was permitted to have a view what is going on in the heavenly sanctuary. Right?
Also ihm wurde gestattet zu sehen, was im himmlischen Heiligtum stattfand.
So in Isaiah is also John, right?
Jesaja, der ist auch Johannes.
And in John in Revelation 4 was permitted to have this view what is going on in the heavenly sanctuary.
Und Johannes in Offenbarung 4 wurde gestattet, einen Einblick auf die Geschehnisse im himmlischen Heiligtum zu sehen.
So on both of them they saw holy, holy, holy.
Und beide von denen sahen sie heilig, heilig, heilig.
And they both must have seen the 24 elders falling down, right?
Und beide mussten denn die 24 Ältesten gesehen haben, wie sie niederfielen.
And they both bowed down then with them. Yeah.
Sie beiden denn beugen sich mit sie zusammen.
Okay. Everybody follows?
Kann jeder folgen?
Okay. So therefore Revelation 4
Deswegen Offenbarung 4.
illustrates this first phase of the judgment.
So, da stellt dieser erste Teil des Gerichts dar.
But and it brings us to the end of the investigative judgment.
Das bringt uns zum Ende von Untersuchungsgericht.
So, and then what phase of judgment would
Welche
Follow.
Phase des Gerichts folgt?
executive?
Die Ausführung des Gerichts.
So, and who is the one executing judgment?
Und wer ist es, der diese Gericht ausführt?
Christ.
Das ist Christus.
So let's remind ourselves. Let's go to to John chapter 5.
Lass uns erinnern, gehen wir zu Johannes 5.
Let's read verse 26 to 27.
Verse 26, 27.
It says, "For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man." Okay, so Jesus obtained the authority to execute judgment.
So, Jesus erhielt die Autorität, Gericht auszuüben.
So, alright, so now let's go back to Revelation 5,
So, zurück zur Offenbarung 5,
verse 1.
Vers 1.
And it says, "And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within it and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals." So this is now at the end of the investigative judgment, right?
Das ist am Ende der Untersuchungsgerichts.
So now the book, in what condition is it?
So, in welchem Zustand ist dieses Buch?
Sealed. Okay.
Versiegelt.
So we understand in the investigative judgment it says the judgment is set in the books are open,
Wir
right?
verstehen in der Untersuchungsgericht, der Gericht wird aufgestellt und die Bücher werden geöffnet.
But then at the end of the judgment, books are
Same again.
sealed again,
Aber
right?
dann am Ende des Gerichts, die Bücher werden versiegelt.
But now the next phase of the judgment begins, the executive part.
Aber jetzt kommt der nächste Phase des Gerichts, das Ausführung des Gerichtes.
So, and what happens? Verse 2.
Und was geschieht denn? Vers 2.
"And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof? And no man in heaven nor on earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open the book and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders saith unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book, and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne." So here we can see it's Christ alone who has authority to execute judgment, right?
Und wir sehen, es ist Christus allein, der die Autorität hat, Gericht auszuführen.
So therefore the Lamb comes.
Also deswegen der Lamm kommt.
And how is the Lamb portrayed here?
Und wie wird der Lamm hier bezeichnet?
Sorry?
Standing, slain.
Yes, it's standing, that's right.
Es steht,
Because it says here in verse 5, right?
sagt hier in Vers 5.
"And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb." And so the lamb is standing here.
Und der Lamm steht.
But how is the lamb described here?
Also wie wird der Lamm hier beschrieben?
Handing.
Slain.
Oh,
She already
sin.
said it.
Sorry.
Yeah, slain, right?
Das ist geschlachtet.
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, what did the lamb do before?
Deswegen, was hat der Lamm zuvor getan?
Went to the cross.
And went to the cross, right?
Zum Kreuz.
So it's only when, by going to the cross, you can have then authority to execute judgment.
Also nur wenn du zum Kreuz gehst, dass du die Autorität haben kannst, Gericht auszuführen.
It's like this point this morning that, you know, that it says in the resurrection you become as the angels. And this, it was the angels that were permitted to gather them and execute judgment. So it's marking the same thing. The resurrection is the cross. You have to go to to be resurrected by going to the cross, and then you could become like the angels and execute judgment.
Yes.
So, das ist wie der Punkt heute Morgen bei der Auferstehung. Dann werdest du wie Engel. Und es ist die Engel, die kommen in der Ernte, um Gerichte auszuüben. Also die Törichten zu sammeln und zu verbrennen. Und es ist, wenn du Engel geworden bist, und das ist derselbe Punkt hier, wo du Gerichte ausüben kannst.
Yes. Okay. So we can see here in chapter 4 and chapter 5 you have the two phases of the judgment illustrated.
So,
Right?
du kannst sehen hier in Kapitel 4 und Vers 5 die zwei Phasen des Gerichts dargestellt.
First the investigative part and then the executive part.
Zuerst der Untersuchungsteil des Gerichtes und dann das Ausführung des Gerichtes.
Okay. But when we go into the sanctuary,
Aber wenn wir ins Heiligtum hineingehen,
in which apartment does the investigative judgment take place?
so in welcher Abteil findet der Untersuchungsgericht statt?
Tells you in Daniel 7 it's the most holy place.
Most holy place.
Sagt in Daniel 7, es ist der Allerheiligste.
Okay. So, but now let's go to this quote that is in the notes, the first one.
Lasst uns zu den Notizen gehen, der erste Zitat.
And it says, there's this white comments on what John saw here in Revelation 4.
Und hier Ellen White kommentiert über das, was Johannes hier in Offenbarung 4 sah.
And at the first moment it seems to be a contradiction to what we just said.
Und am Anfang scheint das ein Widerspruch zu sein von das, was wir gerade gesagt haben.
Okay, it says, as has been stated, the earthly sanctuary was built by Moses according to the pattern shown him in the mount. It was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices. Its two holy places were patterns of the things in the heavens. Christ, our great high priest, is the minister of the sanctuary, and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched and not man. And now she says, as in vision, the Apostle John was granted a view of the temple of God in heaven, he beheld there 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne. He saw an angel having a golden censer, and there was given him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which is before the throne. Revelation 4, verse 5, and Revelation 8, verse 3. So when you go to Revelation 4, verse 5 again,
So, wenn du zur Offenbarung 4, Vers 5 gehst,
it says here, and out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. So, and then in Revelation 8, we remember,
Offenbarung 8,
there is the angel at the golden altar, right?
da steht der Engel am goldenen Altar.
And offers the prayers of the saints, which is the altar of incense.
Bietet den Gebete der Heiligen dar. Das ist der Altar, der Weihrauchsaltar.
And in which apartment are these 2 items?
In welchem Abteil sind diese zwei Gegenstände?
Yeah, in the holy place, right?
Heiligtum.
So, not in the most holy.
Nicht im Allerheiligsten.
And this is also what she says here.
Das
Okay?
ist auch, was sie hier sagt.
It says here, the prophet was permitted to behold the first apartment of the sanctuary in heaven. Yeah, so she says, this was the first apartment. Okay?
Sie sagt hier, das war das erste Abteil.
And then she goes on to say,
Aber sie sagt weiter.
and he saw there the 7 lamps of fire and the golden altar represented by the golden candlestick and the altar of incense in the sanctuary on earth. Again, the temple of God was opened. Revelation 11, verse 19. And he looked within the inner veil upon the Holy of Holies. Here he beheld the ark of his testament. Revelation 11:19, represented by the sacred chest constructed by Moses to contain the law of God. So therefore let's go now to Revelation 11.
So, lasst uns dann zur Offenbarung 11 gehen.
And she quoted here Revelation 11 verse 19. Right?
Sie zitierte Offenbarung 11, 19.
She says here, or the Bible says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. So which apartment is this?
Welcher Abteil ist dies?
Most host, right?
Das Allerheiligste.
And this is also what she says here.
Das ist auch, was sie hier sagt.
And when you jump up to verse 15,
Und wenn du Vers 15 anschaust,
it says, and the seventh angel sounded. So under which angel was here the most holy place opened?
so, unter welcher Engel war der Allerheiligste hier geöffnet?
And the seventh angel.
Unter der siebte.
So when you go to the 1850 chart,
Und wenn du die 1850er Karte anschaust,
unfortunately it's behind the piano here,
so leider ist es ein bisschen versteckt,
but there you can see the fifth angel, sixth angel, and then here the seventh angel.
da konntet ihr der fünfte, der sechste und dann da unten der siebte Engel sehen.
And this is marking here 1844.
Und das markiert 1844 hier.
Okay, so historically, the pioneers marked it at October 22nd, 1844, the beginning of the investigative judgment with the seventh angel sounded.
So, die Pioniere haben das am 22. Oktober 1840 markiert.
44. Is it 40?
1844 markiert, wo der Untersuchungsgericht begann.
Yes.
But you can also prove that fact from in Revelation 11 there, where you were just reading. It says the very next thing, when the temple after the testament, there were lightnings, voices, thunders, an earthquake, and great hail. And when you go to Revelation 8, you cast the censer to the ground, and you have the very same thing. So it's showing you it's the same point, but he's in the holy place when he says it is done.
Yes.
And she says clearly that this is marking the close of probation, so the investigative judgment will be finished. So they're linked together, these two things.
Okay, so let's just pick up this point that Brother Mark just mentioned.
So, lass uns diese Gedanken anschauen.
Okay, so here in Revelation 11,
So, hier in Offenbarung 11
it's the seventh angel that sounded, right?
ist der siebte Engel, der posaunte.
And in verse 19, the most holy place was opened.
In Vers 19, der Allerheiligste würde geöffnet.
Okay, and this was historically on October 22nd, 1844.
Und dies war historisch gesehen 22. Oktober
The
1844.
chart says it,
Die Karte sagt es,
and White also says it.
Ellen White sagt es auch.
Okay, but when you look at this,
Aber wenn du dies anschaust,
and let's read verse 15 again.
lass uns Vers 15 ein weiteres Mal lesen.
It says, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. So, when is this true?
So, wann wird dies in Erfüllung gehen?
At the close of probation.
Yeah, at the close of probation.
Der
Right?
Schluss der Gnadenzeit.
Okay, so therefore we can see October 22nd just typifies the close of probation.
So,
Right?
da können wir sehen, 22. Oktober schattet der Schluss der Gnadenzeit
Yeah,
voraus.
it's Matthew 25 and verse 10, which is the closed door.
Yes, exactly.
Matthäus 25, Vers 10, der geschlossene Tür.
Okay, so, and then when you go down to verse 19 again,
Und jetzt Vers 19 wieder.
it says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven. So, the close of probation is marking what? Or what does Jesus say at the close of probation?
So, was sagt Jesus bei der Schluss der Gnadenzeit?
It's done,
Es
right?
ist getan.
Okay, so this would be also here the seventh plague, right?
Das wäre denn hier der siebte Plage.
Okay, and so in verse 19
Vers 19.
marks here also then the seventh plague, right? When he says it
Markiert
is done.
auch hier der siebte Plage, wo er sagt, es ist getan.
It says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. So what is now seen here in the seventh plague?
So, was wird hier in der siebte Plage gesehen?
The clouds are drawn back, and the ark is brought forth with the law of God in it.
Exactly, right?
Die Wolken werden zurückgezogen und die Bundeslade Gottes mit den Geboten da drin wird hervorgebracht.
Yeah, you all remember? This is what it says under the seventh plague, the law of God, the two tables appear in the sky.
Man konnte erinnern, unter der siebte Plage in White sagt, das Gesetz Gottes mit den zwei Tafeln drinne werden in den Himmel zu sehen.
And then it also says here, And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. So what was there?
So, was war da?
Lightnings, voices, thunderings, earthquake, great hail.
Yes, exactly.
So, Blitze, Donner, Erdbeben, Hagel und Stimmen.
Yes, and now keep your finger here. Let's go to Revelation 8.
So, haltet den Platz hier und geht zur Offenbarung 8.
And let's begin in verse 3
Wir fangen Vers 3 an
down to verse 5.
bis Vers 5.
It says, And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. So the golden altar in the sanctuary was the altar of incense, right?
So, der goldene Altar vor dem Heiligtum war das Weihrauchsaltar.
So in which apartment was the
Und
altar of
welcher
incense?
Abteil war das Weihrauchsaltar?
In the holy place, right?
Das Heiligtum.
So let's continue.
Weiter.
And the smoke of the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. Okay, so when Jesus now cast down the censer, what does it mark?
So, wenn Jesus dieses Weihrauchsgefäß zur Boden werft, was markiert das?
Now, Sister White says in early writing 279 that it's the close of the beginning.
Yes.
Das ist der Schluss der Gnadenzeit.
So you can see that Jesus is also here until the close of probation in the holy place. Okay.
So, wir können sehen, dass Jesus hier bis zur Schluss der Gnadenzeit ist im Heiligtum.
Im Heiligen.
Heiligen.
Yes. In the holy place, in the first apartment, right?
Das erste Abteil.
So it's one time he's illustrated in the most holy place,
So, einmal wird er dargestellt im Allerheiligsten,
but then he's also illustrated in the holy place.
aber dann ist er auch dargestellt im Heiligen.
And it marks the same time then when he finishes his work in the holy place on the most holy place by voices, thunders, lightnings and earthquake. Right?
Das markiert zur selben Zeit, wo er sein Werk im Heiligen und im Allerheiligsten beendet mit Stimmen und Blitze und Erdbeben und Hagel.
Yes, everybody follow so far?
Wieder folgen.
Okay.
You mentioned Isaiah, I'm assuming, because Isaiah confirms this, right? He's at the
Porch.
porch,
Yes.
and he sees all the way into the most holy, therefore both veils are open.
Yes. So Isaiah 6, right? Isaiah stands here,
So, Jesaja 6, Jesaja steht hier am Anfang.
and suddenly, so it says, the veils are taken up, right?
Und plötzlich, sagt Ellen White, die Vorhang wird entfernt.
And where does he look into?
Und worin schaut er hinein?
Most holy place.
Das Allerheiligste.
So when he stands at the porch,
So, wenn er an den Säulenhalle steht,
this would be here, right?
was wäre denn hier?
So when he looks into the most holy place, he must also view the holy place at the same time.
Also, wenn er ins Allerheiligste schaut, dann muss er auch durch das, wenn er ins Allerheiligste schaut, dann muss er auch im Heiligsten hindurchschauen auch.
And he's in the transition between the court and the sanctuary, right?
Das ist das Übergang zwischen das Vorhof und das Heilige.
Okay, we'll see this. Okay.
Das werden wir sehen.
So let's go now to Revelation 15.
So, lass uns jetzt zur Offenbarung 15 gehen.
And let's read verses 1 to 4.
Die Verse 1 bis 4 lesen.
It says, And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty, just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints. Okay, so here you can see, the 7 last plagues, right?
So, hier kannst du sehen, die 7 letzten Plagen.
So therefore, where are you?
So, deswegen, wo bist du?
At the close of
At the close of probation,
Am
right?
Schluss der Gnadenzeit.
And now these saints here,
Sayings,
saints,
diese Heiligen hier,
105 of them.
where do they stand?
wo stehen sie?
Same place as in Revelation 4 on the sea.
Yeah, on the sea of glass, right?
Auf dem glasenen Meer,
Just before the throne.
vor dem Thron.
Yes?
Amen.
Okay. And they had the victory, right?
Und sie haben das Sieg errungen.
So when you have the victory, what are you?
Und wenn du den Sieg errungen hast, was bist du?
You're an overcomer.
Du bist ein
Okay.
Überwinder.
And they are now overcomers, and according to verse 3, what do?
Sie sind Überwinder und gemäß Vers 3, was tun sie?
They sing the song of Moses,
Sie
right?
singen das Lied Mose
And of the Lamb.
und des Lammes.
Okay, so this would be here when you're an overcomer,
Was
right?
wäre denn hier, wenn du Überwinder bist?
And now you sing the song of Moses.
Und jetzt singst du das Siegeslied Mose.
Can I give you another witness, Lord?
1 second. Song of Moses, and yes, and the wrath of God will be poured out. Okay.
Und der Zorn Gottes wird ausgegossen werden.
Wrath of God. Okay, all marking here or here.
So,
Okay.
es markiert alles hier, was auch hier ist.
Okay, and it's the stand on the sea of glass.
Sie stehen auf das glasene Meer.
Just erase these things from yesterday. Okay, sea of glass. All right. What's your point?
Yeah, in Zechariah chapter 4.
In Zechariah 4.
Okay, let's go there. Let's keep your finger here and let's go to Zechariah 4.
It's a parallel to Revelation 4.
Das ist eine Parallele zur Offenbarung 4.
Because Ezekiel's vision, Isaiah's vision, John's vision, Zechariah says they're all the same.
Ezekiel, Jesaja und Johannes, ihre Visionen, Weisheit, die sind alle dasselbe.
And Ezekiel's vision's at midnight.
Und Hesekiel, seine Vision ist am Mitternacht.
And right here it says, and the angel that talked with me came again and waked me as a man that is waken out of his sleep.
Zechariah 4. Verse 1.
Vers 1.
Which is Matthew 25 and verse 6.
Das ist Matthäus 25 und Vers 6.
And he said unto
So
me,
this
what,
would be then here,
Was
right?
würde denn hier sein?
and he says, what seest thou? And he says, I have looked and behold a candlestick. And this is what we saw in Revelation 4.
Er sieht der Leuchter und das ist, was wir in Offenbarung 4 sahen.
But the difference here is that the two anointed ones that are normally either side of the most holy, of the
Mercy seat.
yes, either side of the candlestick.
Aber der Unterschied ist es hier in Zechariah, die zwei Heiligen, die normalermäßig zur linken und rechten von Gnadenthron stehen, die stehen hier zur linken und rechten von der Leuchter.
It's like a combination of both apartments in one illustration.
Es ist wie eine Verbindung von beiden Abteilen in einer Darstellung.
Because the candlestick is Christ, it's God's glory, because he was the one that was this beaten goat, he's in the midst of it, but it's illustrating God's people.
Der Leuchter ist Christus, es ist seine Herrlichkeit, denn der war derjenige, der durch viele Schläge also behauen würde. Aber es ist dann auch eine Darstellung von Gottes Volk.
Yes. Right. So, because what do you see here?
Denn was siehst du hier?
What did Isaiah see in
Was
Isaiah
sah
6?
Jesaja in Vers 6, Kapitel 6?
Christ with the seraphims either
The
side.
glory, yes.
Also die Herrlichkeit, Christus mit den Seraphim auf die jeweiligen Seiten.
You saw the mercy seat,
Das
right?
war die Gnadenthron,
The Ark of the Covenant.
also der Bundeslade sah er.
So, therefore, here you have the Ark of the Covenant
So hier hast du die Bundeslade
with the angels on either side.
mit den
Right?
Engeln auf den jeweiligen Seiten.
And on top of it is the Shekinah of glory, right?
Darüber gibt es der Shekinah der Herrlichkeit.
So this is where you see the glory of God.
Das ist hier, wo du die Herrlichkeit des Herrn siehst.
Okay. But also, according to Zechariah 4,
Aber auch gemäß Zechariah 4,
then you see the candlestick
du siehst der Leuchter
with the two cherubims on either side.
mit den zwei Cherubim, ein auf den jeweiligen Seiten.
So this is an illustration of the most holy place,
So, die Bundeslade ist eine Darstellung des Allerheiligsten,
but the candlestick is an illustration of the
aber der
holy place. Right?
Leuchter ist eine Darstellung des Heiligen.
So you can see how these things are linked together or joined together, right?
Also ihr konntet sehen, wie diese Sachen zusammenkommen oder zusammengebunden werden.
Okay, and we also saw here in Revelation 15 that the overcomers, they were standing on the sea of glass, right?
Wir haben auch in Offenbarung 15 gelesen, dass diese Überwinder auf dem glasenen Meer standen.
And they were singing the song of Moses.
Sie haben das Siegeslied Mose gesungen.
So now let's go back to Revelation.
So lasst uns zurück zu der Offenbarung.
Revelation 4.
Offenbarung 4.
Or let's go first to Revelation 5.
Oder sogar gehen wir zuerst zur Offenbarung 5.
Because in Revelation 5, which phase of the judgment is illustrated there?
Offenbarung 5.
What did we
Welche Phase des Gerichts wird dargestellt? Was haben wir gesehen?
The executive,
Das
right?
ist Ausführung des Gerichts.
Now the Lamb comes, Christ comes and takes the book and executes judgment,
So,
right?
der Lamm kommt, der Christus ist, der kommt, nimmt das Buch und führt Gericht aus.
So let's begin in verse 7
So lasst uns Vers 7
and
anfangen.
let's read down to verse 10.
Wir lesen bis Vers 10.
So, and he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. So who's now falling down here?
Vers 8. Wer fällt hier nieder?
24
Yeah, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders,
Die
right?
4 Tiere und die 24. Ältesten.
And they sung a new song. So what do?
Was tun sie?
Sing the song
They
of
sing the song of Moses, right?
Vers 9. Die singen das Siegeslied
Because
Mose.
they say now, and they sung a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation, and hast made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. So what are they?
So was sind sie?
kings and priests.
They're kings and priests,
Könige
right?
und Priester.
They're overcomers,
Sie
right?
sind Überwinder.
They can judge and
Yes.
also minister.
Also sie können richten, aber auch dienen.
So they are these overcomers,
Das sind diese Überwinder.
and according to Revelation 15, they were standing on the sea of glass, right?
Gemäß Offenbarung 15 standen sie auf dieser glasenen Meer.
But here also, it's the 4 beasts and the 24 elders, right?
Hier auch. Es ist die 4 Tiere und die 24 Ältesten.
And where do they stand? Let's go to Revelation 4.
Wo stehen sie? Schauen wir Offenbarung 4 an.
And let's read verse 6.
Vers 6.
It says, And before the throne there was a sea of glass. So here you have the sea of glass, right?
Also hier haben wir wieder der glasene Meer erwähnt.
Like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. So we also can see they stand here on the sea of glass, right?
Hier können wir auch sehen, die stehen hier auf dem glasenen Meer.
They are the overcomers.
Das sind die Überwinder.
Yes?
Amen.
Okay. And they sing the song of Moses in the Lamb,
Und sie singen das Lied von Mose und des Lammes,
which is a song of victory.
was der Siegeslied ist.
Okay, so thus we can see that these things are all joined together,
So, wir können sehen, dass diese Dinge sind alle miteinander verknüpft.
but the sea of glass,
Aber der glasene Meer,
let's go now to 1 Kings 7 verse 23.
so lasst uns zu 1. Könige 7, Vers 23, sind eure Notizen.
Because it also pertains to the sanctuary. Okay.
Das ist auch in Bezug auf das Heiligtum.
It's also in the notes here. 1 Kings 7:23.
1. Könige 7, Vers 23.
And it says, so it's talking about the temple of Solomon.
Spricht über Salomos Tempel.
It says, And he made a molten sea 10 cubits from the one brim to the other. It was round all about, and his height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. Okay, so what is the sea?
So was ist diese See?
Yes, it was the brazen laver, right?
Und diese bronzene Waschbecken.
And where was it situated in the earthly sanctuary?
Und in das irdische Heiligtum, wo war es platziert?
Yes, in the courtyard,
So
right?
in der Vorhof.
Okay, so in Solomon's temple it was on this side here,
Und Salomos
below.
Tempel, es
Okay.
war hier auf dieser Seite,
but it was still in the courtyard.
aber immer noch im Vorhof.
So what we can see is basically in Revelation 4 and 5 you have all 3 apartments joined together as one apartment.
So in
Okay.
Offenbarung 4 und 5, man hat alle 3 Abteile zusammen als ein einziges.
Okay, and the point I want to make with that
Und der Punkt, den ich damit machen möchte,
is when we go to Exodus 27.
Wenn wir zu 2. Buch Mose 27 gehen,
It's also in the notes.
ist auch in den Notizen,
Beginning in verse 1 and
fangen
2.
in Vers 1 an.
Point I want to make is that also the altar of sacrifice is seen in Revelation 4 and 5. Okay.
Also auch den Opferaltar, Brandopferaltar ist auch gesehen in das Heiligtumsvision.
Okay, so and the altar of sacrifice is also standing in the courtyard, right?
Und das Brandopferaltar ist auch im Vorhof des Heiligtums.
Okay, let's look at this altar of sacrifice.
So, lasst uns dies anschauen.
Exodus 27, beginning in verse 1.
2. Buch Mose 27, fangen Vers 1 an.
It says, And thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits broad. The altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. And thou shalt make the horns of it upon the 4 corners thereof. His horns shall be of the same, and thou shalt overlay it with brass. So, how many horns were there?
Wie viele Hörner?
4.
4.
Yeah. On either side, right?
Auf den jeweiligen Ecken.
Okay. I'm not the best artist, therefore I will not draw this, but I will write down horn. Okay. Horn here.
Also ein Horn auf jeder Ecke.
Horn here, a horn here, and a horn here. Okay, let's continue.
Und weiter.
Verse 3.
Vers 3.
And thou shalt make his pans to receive his ashes, and so on and so forth. We can actually jump down to verse 5.
Wir springen zu
Or
Vers
verse 4, sorry.
4 jetzt.
And thou shalt make for it a grate of network of brass, and upon the net shalt thou make 4 brazen rings in the 4 corners thereof. And thou shalt put it under the compass of the altar beneath, that the net may be even to the midst of the altar. So, what was in the middle of the altar here?
So, was war inmitten des Altars?
Yeah, a grate of network, right?
Also diese bronzene Netzwerk.
It's like a grill. Okay.
Es ist wie ein Griddel.
Okay, so you have this grate. Okay. So, and this was here basically in the middle, right?
Und es war hier in der Mitte.
Okay.
I think it's depicted that way once, that it's sunken down and it's sitting in the middle.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, ja.
So you must.
Du musst dich so vorstellen, dass der Altar so
That's
waagerecht wird, es ist
basically,
in der Mitte des Höhens.
If this is no bird's eye view.
Es hängt unter dem.
Yes.
Ja, genau. Es hängt in den Altar rein.
So it was in the middle of the altar.
So,
Okay, on the
es
middle.
war in der Mitte Höhe von des Altars.
Because let's just read the rest of it. Have you seen it?
Dann lasst uns der Rest davon lesen.
So it says, And thou shalt make staves for the altar, staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with brass. And the staves shall be put into the rings, and the staves shall be upon the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. Hollow with boards shalt thou make it, as it was showed thee in the mount, so shalt thou make it. So the altar was hollow.
Also dieser Altar war hohl.
Yeah, so it was hollow, and then it says here in verse 5
Vers 5
that
sagt,
the net was even to the midst of the altar.
dass der Netz in der Mitte des Altars versunken war.
Okay, so and who was to be, or what does it illustrate? Because it's the altar of what?
Was soll es darstellen? Denn es war das Altar von was?
Sacrifice, right?
It's representing being in the middle between earth and heaven.
Yeah, so basically the victims, or the sacrifices, they were placed upon it.
So diese Opfer, die waren darauf gelegt.
And what does it illustrate?
Und was stellt es dar?
The cross, right?
Das Kreuz.
Okay, and the cross, let's read here this quote.
Und das Kreuz, wir wollen das Zitat hier lesen.
It says, Jesus laid hold on humanity, that with his human arm he might encircle the race, while his divine arm he grasped the throne of the infinite. He planted his cross midway between earth and heaven. Right? And Christ was literally between heaven and earth. Right?
Christus war buchstäblich zwischen Himmel und Erde.
So he was the sacrifice on this altar of sacrifice. Right?
Er war dieser Opfer auf diesem Brandopferaltar.
In the middle between heaven and earth. Okay.
In der Mitte zwischen Himmel und Erde.
Okay. So, but you also had these 4 horns on either side.
Es
Right?
gab auch diese 4 Hörner auf den jeweiligen Ecken.
Okay. Now let's go to think it's in my notes. Zechariah chapter 1.
Lass uns zu Zechariah Kapitel 1 gehen.
And in German it's already Zechariah chapter 2.
In das Deutsch ist es bereits Zechariah 2.
In German it's Zechariah 2 verses 1 to 4. In English it's Zechariah 1 verses 18 to 21.
Zechariah 2, 1 bis 4.
Okay. It says, now speaking about the four horns.
Und er spricht über diese 4 Hörner.
Then lifted I up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, 4 horns. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, What be these? And he answered me, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. And the Lord showed me 4 carpenters. Then said I, What come these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are to come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. So what are the horns?
So was sind diesen Hörnern?
The Gentiles.
Die Heiden.
Okay, so Christ is here in the middle of the cross,
So
right?
Christus ist hier inmitten des Kreuzes.
And you have the Gentiles on either side, right?
Surrounded.
Er ist umgeben von
Yes.
den Heiden.
He's surrounded, right?
Umzingelt.
So let's go to Psalms 22.
Psalm 22 jetzt.
Because Psalms 22 speaks about the cross.
Psalm
Okay.
22 spricht über
So.
das Kreuz.
This nice verse
And-
12.
Yes. And how are the Gentiles illustrated in the Bible?
Und wie werden die Heidenvölker dargestellt in der Bibel? Biest.
Yes, but also, for instance, the Canaanite woman when she came, right?
So auch diese
Yes,
kananitische.
dogs, yeah?
Sorry?
Like dogs.
Aber diese kananitische Frau, wenn sie kommt, sie würde als Hundin bezeichnet.
Okay. But also, they are called sometimes bulls of Bashan and all these things. Okay.
Aber manchmal sind sie auch diese Stiere von Baschan und sowas.
Yeah,
genannt.
you will see it here.
Das
Okay,
werden wir hier sehen.
so let's read verse 1.
Vers 1.
My God, why hast thou forsaken me? So, where does it take us?
So, Psalm 22, Vers 1, wo bringt uns das hin?
To the cross.
Zum Kreuz.
Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? Many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls of Bashan have beset me round. So what did they do?
Was taten sie?
They compassed him round about when he was on the cross,
Und
right?
zingelte ihm, als er auf dem Kreuz war.
They gaped upon me with their mouths as a ravening and roaring lion. I'm poured out like water, all my bones are out of joint, my heart is like wax, it is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And thou hast brought me into the dust of the death, for dogs have compassed me. So here, who have compassed him?
So, wer hat ihn umzingelt?
The dogs, right? The Gentiles.
Hunde, also die Heidenvölker.
These 4 horns.
Diese
Right?
4 Hörner.
Okay. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garment among them and cast lots upon my vesture.
In Jonah, Christ says this experience was Jonah's experience, right?
So in Jonas, Christus sagt, diese Erfahrung war die Erfahrung von Jonas.
And it says in verse 5, the waters compassed me about, even to the soul, the depth closed me round about, the weeds were wrapped about my head.
So sagt, den Wassern umzingelten mich. Und, ja, also den See und Kraut war um meinen Kopf und so weiter.
Yes. So this is the time when you're on a cross. Yeah, the enemies will compass you round about.
Das ist der Zeit, wo du auf dem Kreuz bist. Die Feinde werden dich von allen Seiten umzingeln.
Okay. But now let's go to Revelation chapter 5.
Aber lasst uns jetzt zur Offenbarung 5 gehen.
Okay. So
Matthias, weiter.
that's on bottom of page 5. Under the heading, the Lamb slain on the throne.
So unter der Überschrift, der Lamm auf dem Thron geschlachtet.
Okay, it says here, And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 beasts, and on the midst of the elders stood a lamb as it had been slain. Okay, so where was Jesus illustrated to be slain?
So, wo würde Jesus
In the sanctuary.
als geschlachtet dargestellt im Heiligtum?
On the altar of burnt offering.
So, auf dem Brandopferaltar.
Okay, so therefore he's now on this throne here, where he's slain.
Deswegen
Okay.
ist er auf diesem Thron hier, wo er geschlachtet würde.
Okay, and on all four sides you have the four horns, right?
Auf die all jeweiligen Seiten gibt es diese 4 Hörner,
The Gentiles.
die Heidenvölker.
Okay, but according to Zechariah 1,
Aber gemäß Sacharja 1,
what we read,
was wir gelesen haben,
whom did the Lord send to scatter these horns?
wer hat der Herr gesandt, um diesen Hörnern zu vertreiben?
The four carpenters,
Die
right?
4 Zimmermänner.
And yes, the four carpenters, say louder.
Are the 4 beasts and written here?
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
die 4 Zimmermänner sind die 4 Tiere,
Four
Mm.
seraphim.
Which are the four cherubims,
Yes.
yes.
die 4
Ja.
Cherubim sind.
So, and the four beasts are mentioned here in Revelation 5 verse 6, right?
Offenbarung 5, Vers 6, diese 4 Tiere werden hier erwähnt.
It says, and behold, lo in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, which are the four carpenters,
Die 4 Tiere, was die 4 Zimmermänner sind.
and in the midst of the others stood a lamb as it had been slain. Okay, now let's go to Revelation 7.
So, lasst uns jetzt zu Offenbarung 7 gehen.
Verse 1.
Vers 1.
It says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So who are these 4 angels here? Yes, are the 4 cherubims, right?
Wer sind diese 4 Tiere hier? Das sind die 4 Cherubim.
Are the 4 beasts, the 4 carpenters.
Die 4 Tiere, die 4
It's like
Zimmermänner.
when the seventh, when you come to the seventh plague, the threefold union are surrounding God's people,
Wenn du zur 7. Plage ankommst, die dreifaltige Union umzingeln Gottes Volk.
and he says, "Look up."
Und er sagt, schaut hinauf.
It was they were held in check right there.
Und sie
Yes.
wurden gestoppt, gerade da.
So this because it says hold and
Hold, yes.
hold the 4 horns until the seventh and God is sealed.
Er sagt hier, haltet diese 4 Hörner, bis die Diener Gottes versiegelt werden.
Yes. So they are held right here.
So, sie werden hier angehalten werden.
Okay. So, but it says here that these 4 cherubims, they hold now the 4 winds, which are these 4 horns, these 4 Gentiles, right?
So, es sagt hier, diese 4 Cherubim, please say that again, Lord.
They hold the 4 winds, which
Also,
are the 4 horns.
Diese 4 Cherubim, die halten die 4 Winde, was die 4 Hörner sind.
Yes. Okay. And we saw Jesus sitting here on the throne,
Und
right?
wir haben gesehen, Jesus standing.
Okay. Standing on
Okay.
the throne.
Wir sagen Jesus, wie er hier als Lamm stand auf dem Thron.
Okay. And what did he have in his hand?
Und was hatte er in seiner Hand?
Well, I mean, when he took the book out of the Father's hand.
Yes.
Also als er den Buch aus dem Vaters Hand
He had the
nahm,
book in the Father's hand, right?
er hat das Buch, was in den Vaters Hand
And what was he about now to do?
Und was bestand er davor zu tun?
Yeah, to open it and to execute judgment.
Das
Okay.
Buch zu öffnen und Gericht zu üben.
So, therefore, what does it illustrate?
So, deswegen, was stellt es dar?
The 4 winds on either side, what do they illustrate?
Die 4 Winde auf die jeweiligen Seiten, was stellen sie dar?
The four winds are
Die 4 Winde
The Gentiles.
yes,
sind die Heiden.
but it's because the angels stand on the 4 corners of the earth, right, holding the 4 winds.
Engel stehen auf die 4 Ecken der Erde und halten diese 4 Winde.
So the 4 corners of the earth illustrate the whole world. Yes.
Also die 4 Ecken der Welt, die stellen die gesamte Welt dar.
So therefore, when this is an illustration of the whole world,
Wenn dies eine Darstellung des gesamten Weltes ist,
but it's also an illustration of the throne,
aber es ist auch eine Darstellung des Thrones.
and Jesus is now sitting on the throne,
Und Jesus jetzt steht auf dem
or standing. Okay. So, on what throne is he sitting or standing now?
Thron. So, auf welchem Thron sitzt oder steht er jetzt?
Throne of judgment.
Yeah, the throne of the world, right?
Der Thron des Weltes.
And he's now to judge the world.
Und
Okay.
er soll jetzt die Welt richten.
So he's now sitting on the throne of the world, and he's to judge now the world.
So, er ist jetzt auf dem Thron der Welt und er soll die Welt jetzt richten.
Yeah, and he he can do this because he is the lamb slain, right?
Er kann dies tun, weil er der geschlachtete Lamm ist.
Because by shedding his blood, what did he do
So indem
with
das
respect to the world?
sein Blut vergoss, was hat er getan in Bezug auf das Welt?
Yeah, he bought it back, right?
Er kaufte es zurück.
So now the earth belongs to him, and he's now the rightful owner and judge of it.
So jetzt die Erde gehört ihm und er ist der rechtmäßige Besitzer und aber auch Richter davon.
This is that very thing is written in Joel chapter 3.
Das ist auch in Joel Kapitel 3 geschrieben.
Because it says this in verse 11.
In Vers 11, Joel 3, Vers 11 sagt es.
3 verse 11.
Yes. It says, "Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened." Because God's people were wakened at the beginning, but now the heathen are wakened.
So Vers 12, die Heidenvölker werden erweckt, Gottes Volk werden am Anfang geweckt.
And come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is Armageddon.
Also diese Tal von Jehoshaphat, das ist Armageddon.
For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about.
Und da werde ich die Heidenvölkern
And then it says,
ringsum
pitching the
richten.
sickle, it tells you that it's the harvest, which we know is right there.
Zu den Sichel hinein und das ist die Ernte gerade da.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so
I just had this thought that in Psalm 110 it says, "Sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool."
So, im Psalm 110 es sagt, sitz zu meiner Rechten, bis ich deine Feinde zu meinen Füßen Schäfel machen.
And in Isaiah 66 it says that the earth is my footstool.
Und Jesaja 66 sagt, die Erde ist meine Fußschäfel. Er steht darauf.
yes. Amen. So we can see basically how this is also then an illustration of how the Lord is now sitting or standing on his throne, on the throne of this earth, and he's now to judge and execute judgment on this earth.
So wir können sehen, dass dieser eine Darstellung ist, wie der Herr auf dem Thron der Erde sitzt oder steht und wie er Gericht darüber ausübt.
But at the same time,
Aber zur selben Zeit,
we can see the first apartment of the sanctuary and the second apartment of the sanctuary.
wir können das erste und das zweite Abteil des Heiligtums sehen.
So in Revelation 4 and 5, all three apartments are joined together.
So in Offenbarung 4 und 5, alle drei Abteilen des Heiligtums sind verbunden.
Yeah, so you can see this is an illustration of the throne.
Das ist eine Darstellung des Thrones.
We understand the holy place, the table of showbread, is an illustration of
Wir
the throne.
verstehen im Heiligen, das Schaubrottisch ist eine Darstellung des Thrones.
But also in the most holy place, the Ark of the Covenant is an illustration of the throne.
Aber auch im Allerheiligsten des Bundeslades eine Darstellung des
And in
Thrones.
Revelation 4 and 5, they're all mingled in one illustration. Okay.
Und in Offenbarung 4 und 5, sie werden alle in eine Darstellung vermengt.
Okay. So, yeah. I hope you could follow. Okay.
So ich hoffe, dass wir folgen können. Was Mark said, it was like the altar of incense is also the throne. So you've got 4 thrones.
Yeah, because it's 4 square, it has 4
Yes.
horns.
Yes.
Yeah, which is Ezekiel 1, right? This is the altar of incense.
Hesekiel 1 ist auf dem Altar, Weihrauchsaltar.
Exactly. Yes. So, yeah, many things we can learn from this. Okay.
So vieles, was wir daraus entziehen
But we
können.
only can see and understand it if we bring basically also the sanctuary items line upon line together.
Und das können wir nur sehen, wenn wir zum Beispiel die Gegenstände der Heiligtum Linie auf Linie
But
zusammenbringen.
that's what the structure does. It nails everything in one place.
Und das ist, was diese Struktur tut. Es bringt alles in einen Ort zusammen.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So, shall we do a short summary or?
Soll ich eine Zusammenfassung machen? Oder?
Okay. Okay. So we could see in Revelation 4
So wir konnten sehen in Offenbarung 4,
that the Father was sitting there on the throne, and you could see the sea of
dass
glass.
der Vater auf dem Thron saß und davor war das Glasner Meer
Okay.
zu sehen.
And the Father, and then we could see holy, holy, holy in Revelation 4,
In
right?
Offenbarung 4 konnten wir heilig, heilig, heilig sehen.
And so it illustrates the investigative judgment, where the Father is now investigating and conducting the investigative judgment.
Das stellte das Untersuchungsgericht dar, wo der Vater untersucht.
And then at the end,
Und am Ende
the 24 elders and 4 beasts fell on their faces, right?
24 Ältesten und die 4 Tieren sind auf ihrem
As
Angesicht
it is in
gefallen.
heaven, so it shall be on
So
earth.
genauso wie es im Himmel ist, so soll es auf Erden sein.
It proves the point that the investigative judgment can only be taking place when he's in the most holy place.
Und das beweist, dass der Untersuchungsgericht nur stattfinden kann, wenn er im Allerheiligste ist.
You know, like in Leviticus 6, he doesn't start in the most holy place. It's only when he's gone into the most holy place that this judgment is said, the books are opened.
So,
Okay.
im 3. Buch Mose 16, er fängt nicht im Allerheiligste an. Es ist nur, wenn er ins Allerheiligste
erst an, wenn er im Allerheiligsten ist.
er fängt in Leviticus 16 nicht im Allerheiligsten. Es ist nur, wenn
fängt nicht an, bis er ins Allerheiligste kommt.
im 3. Buch Mose 16, er fängt nicht im Allerheiligsten ein. Es ist nur, wenn er im Allerheiligste hineingeht, dass der Untersuchungsgericht fängt an, wenn die Bücher geöffnet werden und das Gericht gesetzt wird.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's an important point.
Und das ist ein wichtiges Punkt.
To show that it proves that the investigative judgment can only begin on the Day of Atonement when he enters into the most holy place.
Es beweist, dass am Versöhnungstag, dass der Untersuchungsgericht fängt nur an dem Punkt, wo er im Allerheiligste hineingeht.
Maybe you can explain it more fully tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Also, morgen früh kannst du das vielleicht ein
I
bisschen
didn't want
näher,
Yes, because it's just now another point, and
Okay,
I just
yes.
want to make a summary now.
weil
Okay.
das ist ein weiteres Punkt und ich möchte jetzt eine Zusammenfassung machen.
Okay, so just so we saw in Revelation 4 the fathers on the throne, where the sea of glass is,
So, wir haben gesehen in Offenbarung 4, dass der Vater auf dem Thron ist, wo das glasene Meer zu sehen war.
and you had holy, 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 which is Isaiah 6.
Und das heilig, 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 was Jesaja 6 ist.
And at the end, the 24 elders fall down,
Und am Ende hast du die 24 Ältesten, die niederfallen,
as it is in heaven, so it shall be on earth.
so wie im Himmel, so auch auf Erden.
Okay, and then in Revelation 5 it continues that now Christ comes,
Und in Offenbarung 5 es setzt fort, dass Christus jetzt kommt.
and he's now taking this book, which is now sealed again,
Und er nimmt dieses Buch, der jetzt versiegelt ist,
and he's now the one who's executing judgment.
und er ist derjenige, der das Gericht ausführt.
Okay, and then we saw that there were also the 4 cherubims and the 24 elders, and they were singing the song of Moses.
Und dann
Okay.
haben wir gesehen, dass es die 4 Cherubim, die 24 Ältesten gab und dass die den Siegeslied Moses gesungen haben.
Which were the overcomers in Revelation 15 that were also on the sea of glass.
Das sind die Überwindern in Offenbarung 15, die auch auf dem glasenen Meer waren.
And they were singing the song of Moses and of the Lamb. Right?
Sie haben das Lied des Mose und des Lammes gesungen.
Okay, and they were also on the sea of glass,
Sie waren auch auf dem glasenen Meer.
just like the 4 cherubims and the 24 elders in Revelation 4 and 5.
Genauso wie die 24 Ältesten und den 4 Cherubim. in
Because they were
Offenbarung 4.
also singing the song of Moses.
Und die haben auch den Siegeslied Mose gesungen.
But we saw that the sea of glass is basically an illustration of the brazen laver here in the sanctuary.
Aber wir haben auch gesehen, dass diese glasene Meer eine Darstellung von diesem bronzene Waschbecken ist.
Was also called sea.
Es ist auch ein Meer genannt.
So-
im Englischen.
Therefore, we could see that basically that in the heavenly sanctuary, there in Revelation 4 and 5, these different items are mingled together.
Also wir können
Okay.
sehen im himmlischen Heiligtum, in Offenbarung 4 und 5, diese verschiedenen Gegenstände des Heiligtums sind miteinander verknüpft.
Because
the bulls rounded.
Yes.
Yes, also the whole one.
Also hier ist es auch umzingelt von diesen Stieren.
And we also saw that in Revelation 11, the most holy place was opened,
Und wir haben auch gesehen in Offenbarung 11, dass der Allerheiligste geöffnet war,
where the Ark of the Covenant was seen.
wo das Bundeslade gesehen war.
But we also saw that in Revelation 8, Jesus was ministering in the holy place at the golden altar until the close of probation.
Wir
Right?
haben auch gesehen in Offenbarung 8, dass Jesus diente am goldenen Altar bis zur Schluss der Gnadenzeit.
So, which was the holy place.
Und das war das Heilige.
And so the holy place and the most holy place, they both go until the close of probation.
So das Heilige und das Allerheiligste, beide gehen bis zur Schluss der Gnadenzeit.
Okay, so we can see basically that all these illustrations are mingled together as one.
So wir können sehen, dass all diese Darstellungen zusammen vermengt werden als ein ganzes Eins.
Okay, and then the altar of sacrifice, we could see was basically an illustration of the cross,
Und das Brandopferaltar, wie wir sehen konnten, war eine Darstellung des Kreuzes.
where the grate of network was between heaven and earth.
Dieses Netzwerk so auf halbe Höhe zwischen Erde und Himmel
And it had
war.
4 horns.
Dass es 4 Hörnern gab auf den jeweiligen Ecken.
And we saw basically that these 4 horns were the Gentiles,
Wir haben gesehen, diese 4 Hörnern waren die Heidenvölker,
according to Zechariah chapter 1.
gemäß Sacharja 1.
And this is then the illustration of the cross, according to Psalms 22,
Und das ist der Darstellung des Kreuzes gemäß Psalm 22,
where dogs compassed him about.
wo diese Hunde
The Gentiles.
ihn umgeben haben, also die Heidenvölker.
Okay, so and thus we could see basically in Revelation 5, he was illustrated when he came up to the throne to now execute judgment.
In Offenbarung 5 war er dargestellt, wie er zum Thron gekommen ist, um Gericht auszuführen.
And he was illustrated as the lamb slain
Und er war
from the
dargestellt
foundation of the earth.
als ein Lamm, der geschlachtet wurde vor dem Fundament der Erde.
And this is here, right? This is
Das
where,
ist hier.
where the slain sacrifices were illustrated.
Es ist hier, wo diese Schlachtopfer dargestellt wurden.
And the 4 cherubims were with him there.
Und die 4 Cherubim waren mit ihm da.
But the 4 cherubims are also the 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth,
Und die 4
holding the 4
Cherubim,
winds.
die 4 Cherubim sind diese 4 Engel, die stehen auf die 4 Ecken der Erde und halten diese 4 Winde.
Which are the 4 horns.
Diese 4 Winde sind die 4 Hörner.
Okay, so therefore we can see this altar of sacrifice is an illustration of the earth, and Christ is now coming here with a book to execute judgment on the earth.
Also wir können sehen, dass dieser Brandopferaltar eine Darstellung der Erde ist und Christus kommt hier mit dem Buch, um Gericht über die Erde auszuüben.
And he stands now there as the king, and Sister Jennifer, she brought up the point, he will make the enemies your footstool, right?
Und er steht da jetzt als König und wie Schwester Jennifer diesen Punkt machte, er wird seine Feinde zu Schäfel für seine Füße machen.
And in Isaiah it said that the earth is his footstool.
Und in Jesaja es sagt, dass die Erde seines Füßes Schäfels
So
ist.
Christ is now standing here as the King of Kings on the earth to now execute judgment on the earth.
So,
Right?
Christus steht hier als König der Könige auf der Erde, um Gericht über die Erde
And he
auszuführen.
can do this because he's the lamb slain.
Und er kann das tun, weil er der geschlachtete Lamm ist.
He bought back the world through his blood, and
Er
now
hat
he has the right to execute judgment.
durch sein Blut die Welt zurückerkauft und er hat das Recht oder das Anrecht, Gericht auszuführen.
Okay. So many thoughts, many connections. Okay.
Viele Gedanken, viele Verbindungen.
But we can see how the sanctuary service is all to be brought into one.
Aber wir können sehen, wie das Heiligtumsdienst sollte alles zusammen in eine Darstellung dargelegt werden.
And only then we can really understand what is going on there.
Und nur dann können wir wahrlich verstehen, was da vor sich geht.
Yeah?
Amen.
Okay, good. Then let's close for this evening.
Dann lass uns für heute Schluss machen.